What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a new deck for you that I've been working on for about a week. It's an Amber Steel deck that focuses on shifting to big characters and playing a lot of bodyguards to protect those characters. I find that this deck has around a 75% win rate on Pixelborn, and I've been having a lot of fun building and playing it. Let's take a look at what's under the hood. You'll see we have some pretty standard Amber openers with Lilo, Simba, and Stitch. I've gone through a few iterations of this deck with and without Lilo. I don't like having uninkable cards in here, but having her as a possible turn 1 option is just too good to pass up. I think you could take her out of this deck and not suffer any real consequences, but it's really up to you if you want to leave her in or replace her with some kind of inkable turn 1 or 2 character. We also have our big shift characters like Stitch and Tinkerbell. There are plenty of bodyguards to protect them with Simba, Hercules, Donald, Goofy, and Maximus. For a little bit of extra pizzazz, we have some card draw with Simba and small Tinkerbell. But where that really shines is the Musketeer Tabard item. If you can get 1 or 2 of these out before your bodyguards get taken out, then you can quickly fill up your hand and have lots of options for future turns. We also have Hades to return characters to our hand if you really need it, and he can be a good card to quickly take out an opponent's character in a pinch. Finally, we have the standard steel direct damage cards, but only 2 copies of each, as I've found we just don't need to play them that often with all of our beefy bodyguards. The strategy for this deck consists of getting your low-cost Stitch and Tinkerbell on the board to be shifted into their larger versions as quickly as possible. Your bodyguards are essential to this deck's success, and you want to get as many of them on the board as possible so your other characters are never left exposed. Your strategy with the mulligan and first few turns should be to not have anything in your hand that costs more than 3 ink, no uninkables unless it's Lilo or a Lantern. It's okay to keep your expensive shiftable characters in your hand if you also have the lower cost version to start with. Turn 1, you want to play Lilo or Stitch, followed by bodyguards on turns 2 and 3. Once you can safely play your shiftable characters, you should be able to handle most things your opponent throws at you. I think that's a pretty good overview of the deck. The rest of this video is a little different from my other videos. I recorded gameplay with no audio and went back to record audio later. Let me know in the comments if you like this style or not. Before we get into some matches, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you aren't already. Now let's take this deck on the road and see what it can do. Alright, we always like to go first whenever possible. Looks like we're going to be getting rid of almost every card in our hand. These are going to take way too long to get out. We don't need a 5-cost bodyguard to start with. The Stitch and the Lilo are good to keep. We could keep one of the bigger Stitches, but I'd rather have more options to play early in the game, and there's a good chance we'll draw one of the big Stitches again anyway. So to start with, we will ink one of our Lilos because we don't really need 2 of them. We can play our Stitch. Next turn we can either get out a LeFou, a Lilo, or one of our bodyguards. We might wait to get the bodyguard out until after we have our LeFou out. That way there's a reason for the bodyguard to be out. We don't really need the bodyguard for our 1 lore Stitch. But a 2 lore LeFou is a different thing entirely. And we might be able to ink one of the bodyguards. I don't like inking the bodyguards because they're pretty useful with this deck, especially if we can get out our item draw tabard for the bodyguards. Playing the Lilo, they'll probably have a Simba on turn 2. We're going to ink one of our Simba bodyguards because we have the Hercules bodyguard we can play later if we need to. The LeFou, we'll quest the Stitch for 1 and pass. So then on turn 3, we will probably get out our bodyguard so we can start questing the LeFou, which means we may have to ink a Rapunzel. It's not ideal, but she's not super useful in this deck. She's mostly useful for the 2 lore, and if we need the card draw from healing, but we won't need that for a little while, so I think we're safe to get rid of her for now. So we will throw her in here. We're going to quest both of these, put out our own bodyguard, and we can pass. Next turn we'll probably be up to 4 ink, so we can either play another bodyguard or our Lilo. We'll see what our opponent plays and go from there. We are questing for 4 right now, we're questing for 3, so a little bit of advantage on our part, but that's going to quickly change, I imagine. Especially with them playing Ruby as their other color. Looks like they're going to try to shift to the big Aladdin soon, something we have to be careful of. So I think we're actually going to ink our Lilo, because if they're going to be playing red, I want more bodyguards out here for the damage that they'll be able to deal. And we'll get our bigger bodyguard out here. And we're going to go ahead and quest everyone. And hope that they don't get the big Aladdin out yet. I think on the next turn, we'll probably play Grab Your Sword and get rid of most of their characters before they get the big Aladdin out. Good, they're inking him. And Rapunzel to heal their bodyguard. Okay, that's fine. Of course, they can take out our bodyguard with the Aladdin. I don't think they will, but it is an option for them. Alright, that was good for us. I'm going to ink this Stitch so that we can play Grab Your Sword and get some of their characters out of here. Really don't want them shifting into that big Aladdin. And we're going to just quest everyone. Oh, they ended up just conceding. Okay, that works for me. I guess they realized we were going to get too much of an advantage before they would be able to do anything about it. So that is good. Okay, so starting off here, the decision is to ink our higher cost characters and our uninkables and direct damage, since we can't use any of them anytime soon. So the Stitch, the Goofy, Smash, and Fire the Cannons all need to get out of our hand. And then we don't get anything great on the redraw. We did get another Bodyguard Simba that we can hopefully put to use later. Our opponent's playing with a steel deck with some challengers, so we have to have an answer for that, and we just don't at this early stage. So we ink the Captain Hook because we're just not going to need him for a while. Then we use our Simba, and we want to use his ability to draw a card, but we end up discarding the card that we drew because we can't play Grab Your Sword for quite a while. The original strategy was to discard the Hades, but Grab Your Sword was even less useful in this instance. Opponents are still getting out more challengers, which are still going to cause big problems for our deck. So we ink our bigger bodyguard because we just can't use him for a while. We fire the cannons at Captain Hook to try and keep our opponent's characters under control and minimize the damage they can do to ours. We're still unable to really do anything with our characters though, and then the opponent makes us discard a card, so we get rid of Hades because we don't need him anytime soon. We've got plenty of bodyguards in our hand at this point, so we can ink one of them safely. And then we get the Lilo out here, so we can hopefully start questing for 2 on the next turn, but that would require us to get a bodyguard out to protect her. Alright, then our opponent gets out another challenger that's just causing problem after problem, and it's a hard challenger to take out too because we can't just fire the cannons or grab your sword to take him out. We ink another one of our lore characters because we really need to get some bodyguards out here so we can start questing for something. It's still too dangerous at this point to really quest though because of their challengers, even with the bodyguard. They'd be able to take out our characters too easily. They smash the Lilo, preventing us from getting some lore, but they can't take out any of our other characters right now because none of them are exerted. So we ink another bodyguard because we already have one on the board, and we really want to get Grab Your Swords out here to do some damage to them, so maybe we can take them off the board soon. We go ahead and quest our bodyguard, even though they can take him out pretty easily. That'll at least require them to get rid of one of their characters, and we can hopefully use Fire the Cannons on the next turn to take out one of their characters. They do trade the Prince Eric for the bodyguard, which is okay because it gets rid of one of our problems. They get the Starkey out, and he can quest for a lot more lore because they still have a captain on the board. We draw another bodyguard, use Fire the Cannons to get rid of a character like we wanted to. And then we get rid of their other challenger with Simba while he's not as much of a threat. Now Starkey can't quest for as much, and we're a little bit safer. We get our bodyguard out. We don't exert him because we don't need him to protect the Simba. They get an evasive out, which is just another headache we have to deal with. And we get out a Stitch. Instead of holding him in our hand, we quest for a little bit of lore to try and even the playing field. They use Starkey to take out our Bodyguard, and then they use Peter Pan to take out our Simba. It's okay because now Starkey has some damage on him, and we didn't really care about the Simba, and there's some damage on the Peter Pan. We drew the Tinkerbell, but we couldn't play her, and then we immediately had to discard her, which was kind of upsetting. They quest for a little bit more lore. We have to do something about these characters. Luckily, we draw a Hades, and we're able to recover our Tinkerbell from our discard pile, but we still can't play her because we don't have enough ink. We go ahead and quest with the Stitch because I'm not too concerned if we lose him, and it'll at least do a bit more damage to their characters since we don't have an answer for them at this time. They use Lady Tremaine to get Smash back into their hands, so I have to keep that in the back of my head the rest of the match. They use Starkey to trade for the Stitch, which I'm okay with. We didn't need the Stitch, and now that's just one less character we have to worry about. We still can't play either of our big characters, so we just quest with the Hades. Since we don't really need him for anything, it's not a big deal. They take him out with Fire the Cannons. He got a character back, he got us one lore. That's plenty for him to do. We get the Rapunzel, and we don't need her right now or maybe at all, so we go ahead and ink her so we can get out one of our other characters. Tinkerbell takes out the Peter Pan very nicely since we don't have any evasives, and hopefully next turn we can get out the Stitch. They drop the Mad Hatter that can quest for 3 lore, which is a big concern at this point because they're far ahead of us, and now they may be even further ahead. But luckily we get out the Stitch so we can start questing for some lore ourselves. And I consider using the Tinkerbell to take out Lady Tremaine, but I decided to quest her instead because we wouldn't have been able to take out the Mad Hatter with her. They use Smash on her, and then they take her out with the Mad Hatter, but I'm okay with that because that's the biggest problem off the board right there. They play a Duke, they quest Lady Tremaine. It's okay though, because we have 2 cards in our hand. We get some card draw off of the Lilo, but I forget that she has to be exerted by Stitch to get that. I'm a little frustrated with myself because of that, because now she can be taken out easily. We also get a Tinkerbell out on the board, but we can't really use her for anything. And of course, because I had to exert the Lilo, they take her out easily, didn't get any lore from her, kind of kicking myself at that point. We get another 3 lore Stitch out on the board, which is really good for us. Hopefully we can use this to get momentum going forward. And I consider trying to take out some of their characters, so I use the Tinkerbell to get rid of Duke. We don't really care if we lose her, and we just quest with the Stitch for 3. Now the board's much more even. They get out another 3 lore Mad Hatter, which isn't good for us, take out our Stitch, and they have more characters on the board than us. They attack the Tinkerbell with Lady Tremaine. I'm not sure why. Didn't do anything for them, but it gives us time to get out another Bodyguard, and we are able to draw another card. This time we're okay exerting Captain Hook because we have the Bodyguard to protect him, and considering taking out their characters, but I just decide to quest and hopefully get ahead of them. Fully expecting them to quest for a lot on this turn, and they do so with the Mad Hatter, but they end up attacking our other characters, and I think it would have been better for them if they had just quested. They did need to take out some of our characters, of course, but they honestly couldn't take out enough of them at this point to really matter. So we easily win at that point. I was very shocked we won. I didn't think it was going to happen, and I'm really happy that I was able to pull this off in the end. Okay, so we start at this match going first, which is what we always want to do when we can. We've got a couple of uninkables in our hand that we want to get rid of. We have too many LeFous, so we get rid of one of them. We've got our small Stitch, so we keep the big Stitch, even though it costs a lot. Hopefully we can get him out pretty quickly in this match. And I'm pretty happy with this opening hand. It could be a little bit better, but I think we have enough cards to play on the first few turns to make it worthwhile. So we ink one of our extra LeFous that we don't need, and we get out a Stitch so we can get ready to shift the bigger Stitch later on. Our opponents are playing an Amber deck. We draw Hades that we're not going to need for quite a while. We ink the Captain Hook because we also don't need him, and he's a 1-drop that we'll probably never play. Get a LeFou out so we can maybe start questing for a little bit. There's nothing on the board on the opponent's side, so it's safe to quest the Stitch for 1. Our opponent inks their own big Stitch. And then they play their own bodyguard, but nothing to guard against, so it's not really that big of a concern, but it will take out either of our characters if we quest them, so we probably want to keep them safe at this point. We don't need the little Tinkerbell since we don't have big Tinkerbell. We get out another character that we can quest for 2, but it's not really safe to quest any of them at this point. They ink a Flynn, which is okay with me. I don't want them questing for a lot, but we do have to be concerned that they're gonna have other Emerald characters that we'll have to deal with later. They're looking for a song card in their deck with their Ariel. They end up getting Be Our Guest. I guess they're looking for some of their other characters. Draw a Bodyguard, and we really need to get our Stitch out this turn. So we ink our other small Stitch that we don't need right now. Hopefully we don't regret that later. And then we have to decide if we want a Bodyguard or if we want the big Stitch. So we end up going with the big Stitch just so he's out there. And we still don't have our own Bodyguard, so it's not really safe to quest yet. Our opponent inks a Be Our Guest, and they play Ursula's Necklace. They return the big Stitch to our hand, which also returns the little Stitch to our hand. At least we didn't lose those cards, though. It does delay us a little bit. They end up questing with their Bodyguard, and we draw another Captain Hook that we still don't need, so we ink him again. And we go ahead and get out our Bodyguard so we can at least get a little bit of lore on the board with our other characters. We also get our Stitch because we have enough ink, and we can shift him on the next turn. Now we're up to 5 and our opponent's at 1. We've got a Bodyguard. We're ready to shift into the big Stitch and really get some momentum going on our next turn. Alright, they use Sudden Chill to force us to get rid of one of our cards. We don't need the Hades right now, so it's an easy choice. Unfortunately, they use another Sudden Chill and make us get rid of our Stitch, which we really needed to get out on the next turn. It's not all doom and gloom because we do have plenty of characters on the board and a big Bodyguard, so we can still quest for a lot even without the big Stitch, but it is unfortunate that we've wasted so many turns trying to get him out and it just hasn't worked out. They ink another Flynn, which is still okay with me. We draw another Bodyguard, and it's basically free to play him right now. So now we have 2 large Bodyguards on the board that the opponent's going to have a lot of trouble getting through with no real removal in their deck. And it's 11-1. We're looking pretty good right now. They play a Mother Gothel, which is a bad card for us, obviously, because we have a lot of characters that we want to quest, and she's going to just completely lock that down. We can't do anything about her this turn, but again, we draw another Bodyguard, and it's another free play because there's nothing on the board on their side we're really worried about. We quest for a lot so we can have a good advantage here going into the next turn, and obviously we're going to have to take out the Mother Gothel. So we wanted as much lore before she gets put on the board in case there's some reason we can't take her out on the next turn. Need as big of an advantage as we can get before she really takes effect. And of course she quests and locks down all of our characters. On the last turn we could have taken out their Bodyguard, and it would have been a little bit easier to take Mother Gothel out on the next turn, but I think getting the lore was the right move. We have plenty of characters on the board that we can use to wipe out everything. We draw the big Tinkerbell, which is extremely useful, so instead of playing the Bodyguard again, we just ink him, get the big Tinkerbell out. She's going to do 1 damage to everyone, which makes it so much easier to take out the Bodyguard and then take out the Mother Gothel. We can easily trade one of our big Bodyguards for the Simba, and then we can trade our Lilo for the Mother Gothel. We lose the Lilo, it's fine though, we have plenty of characters. And we can use our other Bodyguard to take out the Mother Gothel. All we need is 2 lore, so all we have to do is quest the LeFou, and victory is ours. The Mother Gothel could have presented a problem for us, but we just had too many characters on the board by the time they got her out. So it was easy enough to pull that off at the end. We're going second in this match, And we start off with a lot of cards that are going to take a really long time to get out on the board. So we can ink all of these 5 and 6 cost cards, or 4 cost bodyguard that we can't get out for a while. We get much better draws on the redraw, and we have cards that we can play on turns 1, 2, and 3. We're playing against an emerald deck, so they're going to be questing for a lot. They add some amber into it. We could ink the smash or the captain hook, but we decide to ink the captain hook just in case we need the smash later on. We get out our turn 1 Lilo. Turn 2, we can get out our Simba for bodyguard and start questing. They ink one of their bigger bodyguards, and they play a Flynn, so they can start questing for 4 every turn, which is going to be a problem for us. We ink one of our LeFous because we don't really need 2 of those, especially with our Lilo. Get out a bodyguard so that we can go ahead and quest our Lilo for 2 and not let the opponent get too big of an advantage on us. We will have to deal with that Flynn at some point, but we can wait until next turn and hopefully use the smash against him. It's a bit of a waste to do 3 damage to the 2 willpower character, but we need him off the board. They end up playing the Cheshire Cat, and smash is perfect for the Cheshire Cat. They quest, they're ahead of us by a lot now, but it's okay because we're going to even the score here in a minute, hopefully. We ink our bigger bodyguard that's going to take a little bit longer to get out since we have smaller bodyguards we can use. We smash the Cheshire Cat, getting him off the board. We don't have to suffer his negative effects, and they can't get as much lore. We want to get the Flynn off the board, so we go ahead and use our Simba since it won't take him out, and we discard a card that we aren't going to need. It's 6-4 now, so we're doing okay. They've only got the Lilo and nothing to protect her. They quest with her anyway, so that leaves her open for us to take her out with the Simba if we want to. They play a Lantern so they can start getting some bigger cost characters out faster, and they use the Lantern to play their own bodyguards, so we're back to not being able to take out the Lilo. Draw a big Tinkerbell that we won't be able to play for quite a while, but we ink our other smaller bodyguard since we have Hercules in our hand and we can get him out. We play the LeFous so we can start getting a little bit more lore since we have a bodyguard out already to protect him. They just in time a Kuzco. You know, it's a good choice to get him out with the ward, and he'll banish whoever challenges him plus the 3 lore, but it's not really something I'm concerned about at this point in the game. Maybe I should have been a little bit more concerned about him, but we have lots of cards. We're doing pretty well on our side. They use the Lantern to get out another Lilo, but I know if we can just make it a few turns and get out our Tinkerbell, we can deal some serious damage. We ink our other bodyguard because we already have one on the board. We have a Tinkerbell in the discard, so we play our Hades so we can get her back and maybe shift into the bigger Tinkerbell instead of just playing her outright. We didn't have the ink to play her this turn, so we unfortunately couldn't get her out. Quest with everyone. It's 12-11. We're looking pretty good, even though they have the Kuzco. They can quest everyone this turn for a lot of lore. I think they could get 8 lore this turn and be up to 19. And I think they do just that because they're pretty confident with their bodyguard on the board. So it's looking pretty dangerous for us with the 19 right now. We ink the smaller Tinkerbell so we can play the bigger Tinkerbell. And we use her 1 damage to take out the 2 Lilos, put some damage on the bodyguard. We have to take out all of their characters or we lose on the next turn. So we use our bodyguard to take out their bodyguard, and now we're left with nothing, but it's okay. We use the Hades to take out the Kuzco because we don't need the Hades. And now we're pretty clear to win this game on the next turn as long as nothing crazy happens. It's 16-19. It doesn't really matter what they play at this point because we'll be able to quest for enough to win this thing. They use 2 lanterns and don't do anything with them. I think they realized it was over. And we pull off the victory at the last minute, even with their 19. All right, we start off this match going second. Draw a couple of Rapunzels, a lot of bodyguards, a whole lot of cards that we really can't use anytime soon. So we get rid of everything that's 4 or more and uninkable. We don't do well on our redraw, but it's okay. We have a couple of cards that we can play for the first couple of turns at least. We have extra LeFous, so we can probably ink one of those on turn 1 and get out our Stitch. The opponent inks a Scar and then passes to us. So we ink one of our LeFous because we don't need 2 of those, and we get out a turn 1 Stitch. The opponent plays a Sapphire 3/1 character with support. I don't see anyone playing this character a lot, so it's a unique situation. We ink our bigger bodyguard that we don't need, play our LeFou that's going to give us 2 lore, but it's definitely not safe to quest anything because the opponent can deal a lot of damage to us. They ink a Let It Go, which is okay with me. The fewer they have to play later on, the better. We play a Mickey Mouse Detective so they can start their Sapphire ramp, put another card into their inkwell. They're up to 4 and we're still at 2. We don't need the Rapunzel for a while, so we'll ink her. And we have a couple of options to play on this turn. We could get the Tinkerbell out to prepare for the shift, or we can get the Bodyguard. We end up going with the Bodyguard so we can actually start questing our LeFou and our Stitch. But we still don't quest them this turn because the opponent can take out our Hercules in one shot, and we don't want that to happen. So they're up to 5 ink now, doing pretty well with their ramp, and they're getting more card draw. Use 1 jump ahead and they get another ink into their inkwell. They're looking pretty good with their ramp right now, and we still have no lore on the board. We ink a Smash because we just can't use it right now for anything really productive. It would be a waste to use it on the Mickey or their other character. We shift our Stitch so we can finally get some lore on the board. Now if they take out the Bodyguard, it's not as big of a deal because we have a bigger character. Of course, they can take out 2 of our characters this way, which isn't great. We just have to hope that they don't take out the Stitch. The quest, which gives support to Mickey, and he's able to take out our Bodyguard with 1 shot. So now our other 2 characters are exposed. We really need to get another Bodyguard on the board to protect them. They play Maleficent that can quest for 3, something we really need to take care of, or we could find ourselves behind really quickly. We don't need the Captain Hook, so we ink him, and we get another Bodyguard on the board to protect our high lore characters. We end up questing them instead of taking out the opponent because we don't want to take 3 damage from him. Of course, they can do the same thing they did last turn and just lend the 3 support to Maleficent to take out our Bodyguard. But we needed the lore. You don't want to fall too far behind in your lore when you're playing against a blue ramp deck. So now the Maleficent is 6/6, and she easily takes out our Bodyguard, and he only deals 2 damage, so she's perfectly safe. It's 11-2 right now. We're doing okay, especially against a ramp. They heal the Maleficent for 2 with a Rapunzel and get 2 cards in their hand, which isn't great. You never want them to have a lot. They play the Grandma so that they can get more ink in their inkwell, but we're doing pretty well at this point. I'm not too concerned. We draw the Hades. I don't think we really need him right now. We ink our smaller Tinkerbell so we can go ahead and get the big one out because she'll at least get their support character off the board and we don't have to worry about him anymore. We also destroy the Grandma, which gives them another ink. But again, we're doing pretty well with our lore right now, and they're not at 10 yet. We quest up to 16. They're still at 2. They're 2 off from their 10 ink as well. We're doing really well. They have to take out 1 of our characters in order to stop us from winning on the next turn, which of course isn't that big of a deal. But I think we can survive pretty well. They play their own big Stitch and lets them draw 2 more cards, but they spent a lot of ink playing him and they don't have much left to play anything. So they realize that we can win on the next turn or two, and they end up conceding, which is okay with me. We start out this match going second. We draw a couple of LeFous we can play, a lot of cards that we can't play. We want to get rid of the higher cost, the direct damage, and we get rid of the Stitch because we don't have smaller Stitch right now. We get a slightly better hand. We have 3 LeFous, so we can definitely ink 1 or 2 of those without noticing. Alright, the opponent doesn't play anything on their turn, they just ink a card. Now we can ink 1 of our LeFous. We don't have any turn 1 plays, but that's okay. We have a lot of plays we can do later. And the opponent gets out a Gaston, so we're up against a Ruby deck. We're going to have to deal with some aggro here. We'll have to make sure we manage that accordingly. We can ink another LeFou here, and we can get out our own LeFou, so we can start questing for 2. Of course, we can't do that yet because of the Gaston, who can just take him out immediately. So we really need to get a Bodyguard out on the board or find another way to deal with Gaston. They play a Maleficent so they can start getting some card draw, so this could be a really dangerous deck to play against with the card draw and the aggro. We ink our small Stitch because we don't have big Stitch to shift onto. We play the small Tinkerbell so we can hopefully get our larger Tinkerbell out on the next turn and really start doing some damage to the opponent. They ink an Archimedes, and they play a Magic Mirror for even more card draw. We draw the uninkable Hades, but we don't need him to recover any characters right now, so he is kind of useless. We ink our 2 Lore Lilo so that we can shift into our bigger Tinkerbell right off the bat. That'll deal 1 damage to everyone, so now both of their characters only have 1 willpower left, and we should be able to take them out with another big Tinkerbell or an attack if we really need to. We quest the LeFou, even though we know the Gaston can take him out. At least Gaston will be off the board and won't be able to do a lot of damage to our big Tinkerbell. They play Rafiki, which is really unfortunate here, and he takes out the LeFou easily. And the Gaston is still a problem on the board that we're going to have to deal with. We get another smaller Tinkerbell that we could shift into a bigger Tinkerbell again since we don't have the ink, but we just ink her instead. And we play one of our bodyguards so we can protect our Tinkerbell. That way, when they attack with a Gaston, we'll be protected. We use the Tinkerbell, though, to take out the Rafiki so he can't attack, and then we use the 2 residual damage to take out their Gaston. All they're left with is the Maleficent, and we have a Bodyguard and a big Tinkerbell on the board. So we're doing okay right now. They are at 5 ink, now they're at 6, and they can play Dragonfire. So that's exactly what they do, is take out our large Tinkerbell with the Dragonfire. Put the Hades on the board so we can get our Tinkerbell back. And they're at 6 ink now, so we do have to be aware that they can play Be Prepared on the next turn. We get out a Captain Hook, and we quest with the Donald, just so we can get another lore on the board. We don't want to play all of our characters because Be Prepared is a real threat. And I think that's what they're trying to find in their deck right now with all of their card draw. We ink our big Tinkerbell because we have 2 of them in our hand, and we don't need 2 of them. And we get out another Bodyguard so that when they do play Be Prepared, we don't lose our big Tinkerbell or our big Stitch. But if they don't play it, then we're at least protected with 2 bodyguards and we can quest our other characters. So they end up playing Dragonfire on one of our bodyguards, which means they probably don't have Be Prepared right now. We still have another bodyguard that they have to deal with, which is why I like having a lot of bodyguards in this deck. That way when they take out 1 or even 2 of them, you can survive that pretty easily. We ink the Smash because it would be kind of a waste to play it on just the Maleficent. And we get our big Tinkerbell out so that she'll take out the Maleficent and we can start questing for a little bit more. So we quest everyone that's on the board. We're up 9-0 right now, and Be Prepared is still a very real threat. We get out a high cost Elsa so that they can exert our characters and we can't get any more lore. It's also a danger now having an 8 cost character on the board. They can just sing Be Prepared instead of having to waste 7 ink on it. play our big Stitch, so we can hopefully get more lore on the board, but again, we're still mindful that Be Prepared could come and bite us, but it's a chance we just have to take. We're 11-0, we're doing okay. Draw a card. I think they're still looking for that song. They get a Maui out, which I wasn't really expecting at this point, and he takes out our bodyguard really easily. They don't do anything with the Elsa, and we draw another bodyguard, which is very good for us right now because we need the protection from the Maui. So we quest with everyone so that we can get our lore up really high. We're at 18. There's not a lot that can stop us right now. Using Magic Mirror to still try and find a card to deal with us. They get another Maui out, which I really wasn't expecting. You don't often see two Mauis on the board. One of them takes out the bodyguard, and the other one can take out another character. I think they should have taken out the Stitch. Yeah, I think their attacks, not really sure what they were doing with those attacks right there. It was definitely not the most efficient they could have been. And they end up conceding because there's no way they can really come back from that at that point. Alright, I want to thank everyone for watching this video and supporting the channel. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And stay tuned for more Lorcana content. Till next time, people.